Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode number 185. Hi, I'm Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
And I'm Jill. Chris and I are your hosts for this podcast and the founders of the Becoming Ellie community.
We decided to name our community Becoming Ellie because Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging who beat Thor in a wrestling match. Jill and I thought, hey, we want to be like Ellie, fit and strong as we age.
Yes, we do. You can find out more about the Becoming Ellie community and this podcast at our website, becomingellie.com. Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I. Sign up for our newsletter while you're there.
Today we're talking about Pilates, gut health, and a bit more with Charlyn Huss. Let's go to the podcast.
Today we're excited to speak with Charlyn Huss, a nationally certified Pilates teacher, movement educator, and gut health specialist. With over 25 years' experience, she's used innovative mind-body training to help transform lives. Her expertise blends movement science, psychology, and nutrition to optimize posture, boost confidence, and achieve lasting fitness and wellness for her clients.
Charlyn co-created CoreSpring, a portable, patented, Pilates-inspired apparatus and method. She is also the founder of Playhouse Pilates, a unique studio that combines movement, mindset, and even gut health to help people feel their strongest. Thanks for joining us, Charlyn.
Thanks for having me.
I know many of our listeners are familiar with yoga, but would you briefly tell us about Pilates?
Pilates was created by a man named Joseph Pilates. He was born in 1883 in Germany, and he was sickly as a child. He had asthma. He also suffered from rickets. By all accounts, his mother was a naturopathic, not a doctor, but an herbalist. And his father was a prize-winning gymnastic competitor, and he had a gymnasium. So Joseph was expected to condition his body and to heal himself naturally from an early age. And he became so good at all that he studied everything he could, including yoga, calisthenics, Greek Spartan exercises, boxing, sword fighting, sword play, all these kinds of combat training he did with his brother Frederick and other people. He reshaped his body, so he never suffered from the bone deformity from rickets. And he was pretty much asymptomatic for asthma. And that had to do a lot with him studying breathing and pranayama breathing in yoga, which he converted into an exercise called the 100 in Pilates. An exercise, I will add, that is fallen out of favor a little bit in the reformer Pilates world because it's difficult to teach and it's very misunderstood. It's a breathing exercise, my experience, having toiled for almost 30 years trying to teach people this thing.
Toiled, that doesn't sound encouraging.
It really was. I mean, I have to full confession, when I was a student and client of Pilates, I thought, when I knew I wanted to teach it, I thought, well, I don't have to teach the 100. I mean, I'm not going to teach that. But I had some wonderful teachers that came into my life that made me do it every time I came in there.
Well, what caused you to become a national certified Pilates teacher and open your own studio?
Reluctantly. Because I don't really do things halfway. If I get my teeth into something, I really do a deep dive. And so Pilates sort of changed my life. But now it's not a 5,000-year-old tradition, but it borrows from a lot of different ones. But I want to just get back to Pilates for 1 second, because what intrigued me about it is that it is its own method. People say, oh, I do Pilates exercises. Well, that's not Pilates. Pilates is a method. Pilates has concepts that keep it interesting. So when I discovered Pilates, having curated exercise my whole life because I had scoliosis and pain in my back as a child, I wanted to move. Movement made me feel better, but Pilates was the first thing that actually made me feel like I could accomplish something physically. Like I was an athlete trapped in a body that I couldn't do stuff with because I had this bad back. So it actually made me quite an introvert for many, many years. And I studied acting and started teaching as a way of getting myself out of introversion, to be honest. With Pilates, I couldn't stop talking about Pilates because when I discovered it was a method, when I realized what it was and that it wasn't just some exercises in a book, that the exercises had meaning and structure and there was a sequencing that was a logic to doing it. I've never been bored of Pilates, ever. I don't get bored generally, but I never have been disinterested in what Pilates has to offer, even though I started out in yoga.
I will say that I take Pilates sometimes, both mat and reformer, at my gym, and the instructor always makes us do the 100. So I didn't know it was an option to skip it.
I'm so happy to hear it. That's somebody who knows what they're doing. I have people come to me, and this has been going on for 15 years. And I'll say, so you've been doing Pilates, at the studio over there. That's great. So we're going to do the 100. They'll be like, what's that? And then I'll show it to them like, I've never done that.
Oh my goodness.
That started happening more and more and more and more. And that's the commercialization of Pilates. So let's just say I came into Pilates when it was an esoteric practice. And back to your question about what made me become a certified teacher, I just got really lucky to come into the Pilates world, into a studio that was connected to the national movement of Pilates. There were elders in the Pilates community, people who had worked with him. He died in 1967. And they wanted to, they saw that Pilates was going to become generic because there was a lawsuit going on. I mean, I got a letter from a man who told me I couldn't use the word Pilates, couldn't say I was a Pilates teacher. So you had studios popping up that said, based on the method of Joseph Pilates, like they couldn't say it because of this legal battle, which ended in like 1998, 99. So I was connected to this studio that was connected to the people who eventually was the Institute for the Joseph Pilates Method out of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it became the Pilates Method Alliance, which became the entity that said, who is a Pilates teacher? And it was 450 hours. It involved learning these exercises across these apparatus. And that's what constituted a Pilates teacher. And that's what any reputable teacher training does establish. It really was for the consumer to understand when you're dealing with somebody who is a certified teacher who has learned safety, scope of practice, and how to take someone through the transformative experience that is Pilates, vis-a-vis someone who went online and did a Pilates mat certification for $39.95, which still exists.
Right.
So the PMA, I was introduced to when they first were forming in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they offered their first exam to create a certified teacher in 2005. I took that exam and I have remained certified since then. And the reason I did it was because I'm an educator. I'm an academic in some ways. I went to the Sorbonne. I have a degree in psychology. I have a master's degree. I have 2 master's diplomas. So I really appreciate credentials just to speak to people about what I do. And it gave me the NCPT. At the time, it was PMA-CT or something. It's much simpler now. NCPT, Nationally Certified Pilates Teacher. And here's another distinction. And I appreciate that you use the word teacher. I am a teacher. I can instruct someone in a workout, but what I am teaching them are skills. Pilates and learning Pilates exercises and going through those instructions creates something for you outside of the class. Now, being instructed does that too, but teaching, I mean, I have people come and say, I really have your voice in my head when I'm lifting my groceries. And there's a YouTube video that's hilarious. It's someone dragging a dead body and they stop and they go, okay, what would my Pilates teachers?
Something about posture, I'm sure.
Use your core to drag it. Anyway, so there's a lot of humor, a lot of, people are punking Pilates right and left. And I remember the first time I heard it in a movie, I just went, oh no, it started. Because I've always wanted to teach it to everybody who would stand still for 5 minutes to listen to the wonders of it. So I've never thought of it as an exclusive thing. But becoming a certified teacher was just so I could do it so people understood what I was doing. Because at the time I did this in 2005, people really didn't know. They still didn't really know what Pilates, and I had a lot of celebrity clients. I was in Burbank. People with a lot of education, people with free time, who'd been there, done that. They'd done yoga, they'd done personal training, they'd ran in the 70s. These were the people. The personal training world opened up the one-to-one Pilates world that I stepped into in the 90s. Without that transition from the DIY running down the street to the 80s when people were actually going to set down some money to work with a trainer, just your average person. That used very exclusive. That opened the door for people like me to charge one-to-one to teach Pilates, which is really the best way to learn the method. Becoming a studio owner was just because I couldn't work for other people. I was doing other things. I studied Alexander technique. I studied Yamana body rolling. I studied craniosacral therapy. Pilates was just one of those esoteric things that I studied that just happened to become a worldwide phenomenon. But what happened was I wanted to do these programs. I wanted to teach my acting classes and then talk about nutrition. And these studio owners were like, just teach Pilates. And I'm like, I got a vision for something different. So that's why I opened Playhouse Pilates.
Your tagline or website says something about helping people live strong, pain-free lives through optimal alignment.
Yes.
What does that mean? What is optimal alignment?
So we have ideas and we see images all the time of ideal alignment, ideal posture. If I'm standing in a party and I say I'm a Pilates teacher, everybody goes, everybody
Stand straight.
is a little bit taller.
Yeah.
We know what ideal posture looks like. That's why we pay good money to go see ballet and see dancers and see athletes and gymnasts do these remarkable things with their body. We have a body. We know how remarkable what they're doing is because we have one. But optimal is different because you go through life. I went through life. I had very hunched over posture. I had asymmetrical muscle development in my back. So for me, having posture at that time, all I could shoot for was optimal, meaning what my body could do, what it could actually do that felt good. And ultimately, if it feels good, it's probably going to look good. So I always talk about optimal as opposed to ideal because there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame around posture. There's a lot of shame around, because our mother's voice, you sit up straight, put your shoulders back, whatever we heard. I had a client once, I said, well, let's talk about your walking and we're going to look at this and that. And he goes, wait a minute, I was 65 years old. I've been walking my whole life. You're going to tell me you're going to teach me to walk? And I said, let's just say, Joe, when you stood up and started walking, your family went, yay! And then you didn't hear anything for 13 years till your mother said, sit up straight. I mean, when did you ever learn to walk? You taught yourself. People just stood there and made sure you didn't hit your head. Really, we teach ourselves to walk. But in the Alexander practice, which preceded in some ways my ambition to be a teacher of movement to Pilates, there's these natural movements that heal us. And Hippocrates spoke about it years ago. Walking is healing, but we teach ourselves to do it. So when we can optimally align our posture through movement, through walking, through sitting in ways that are conscious and we consciously participate in those activities, we can live healthy lives and never think about these things. But if you think about it just a little bit, your life improves exponentially. Your aches and pains are less because you're optimally aligning and strengthening through daily habits and movements. So what Pilates gives and what it gave to me was the ability to strengthen and it dynamically strengthened this kind of alignment with resistance, either your own body resistance or the resistance of the springs, to create this ability to improve faster and to sustainably stay stronger your whole life.
So CoreSpring we mentioned that in your intro, and it's a big part of how you offer Pilates at home and on the go. Can you explain what CoreSpring actually is and how does it differ or add to regular Pilates?
So CoreSpring, I didn't set out to say, I'm going to invent something or let's create something. I had a mastery program where I was teaching Pilates students how to teach Pilates. And one of these people was a client, a full-time driver for UPS, who was a client at my studio from 2013 to 2017. And because in 2017, he called me and he said, I want to do your Pilates mastery course. And I was like, really? Okay, cool. So he came into that somewhere late 2017, early 2018. And he was very much into DIY like I was. He did stuff at home. I always did stuff at home, put down a beach towel or ultimately a Pilates mat. And he was always innovating, using straps and different ways to use bands. And I was always encouraging him and saying, great. And we went to Pilates conferences together. And he's the only mastery student in my program who ever accompanied me to the Pilates Method Alliance conference, which was an annual conference bringing people from all over the world to share things, all things Pilates. And after one of these conferences, he said, I have something I want to talk to you about at Mastery. And I said, okay. So he came the following week to Mastery and he said, I'm confused. When we're on the machines, we have a spring. But when we go to the mat, we use a band. Why can't I get my own spring? And I said, what does that mean? He goes, my own spring to kind of move around and do stuff on the mat, away from the machines, outside. And I was like, I have no idea. My whole brain just sort of, my entrainment at that moment. And I face this almost every day that I'm talking to Pilates teachers about CoreSpring. We hook the spring up to stuff. We don't hold it and use it separately. That's not Pilates. So in my head, I kind of saw immediately what I wanted to do and we put it together. So that's why I co-created the apparatus, but the method is really what I created, even though this person, Joel, is on both patents and we still collaboratively work together. He's not part of the business, but he's definitely part of what took me, because I was open to different ideas. I think that CoreSpring needed parents. It needed somebody who wasn't in the Pilates world entirely to see the possibility. And then it took somebody who was deeply in the Pilates world to actually see that it was an apparatus and not just a prop. So for about a couple of months working with this thing, we would have these conversations. Well, is it like it's not like a band, but it's not like a magic circle. It's an apparatus. It just is, because it fundamentally changes the exercises and it gives you new ways of moving. Whereas a prop is essentially something that assists or challenges, but it doesn't necessarily fundamentally transform the movement and what it's creating, like a reformer does, or a Cadillac, or Wunda chair. It's what essentially it is, because I looked at it and I said, I think we're going to apply for a patent for this. He said, a patent? I said, I've never seen this before. And I've seen everything in Pilates for 30 years. And we did. We applied for the patent and we got 2 patents. And what it is a spring, an expansion spring with loops that adjust in length that you hold. Now we need to adjust because when you're working with an expansion spring, unlike a band, which you can, it's got variable lengths, you just hold it at different points along the band. A spring, you can't really do that the same way. You can do some elements of that. You really have to, it has to be proportional. So we worked with many different prototypes of spring. It's a very simple expansion spring and they're very simple loops, but every part of CoreSpring is customized. That spring, I went to a spring engineer, a spring company, and I worked with the engineer to make a spring that was friendly to the body, because every other spring we were using created torsion and pulling in the joints, particularly the traps, because you're holding it in your hands, you're interacting it with your arms. So the customized spring kind of eliminates a lot of that torsion. It doesn't snap away. And if it does, it's sort of gentle. Also, the whole method is about interacting with it in a way that's very gentle on the joints, but activates. And what it does is orchestrate. When you're working directly with the spring, as opposed to hooking it up somewhere. As a Pilates teacher, I spent most of my time in sort of a geometric relationship with my client's body. Where could I put the spring in relationship to their joints so that it wouldn't create full torsion, so that it could activate the core? That was really my job. My job was alignment, get this person into alignment, add the resistance in a way that doesn't pull them out of it and helps them strengthen their core with that resistance. So with CoreSpring, and the loops had to be custom designed because it had to work with people of different heights up to a certain point. And then we add extenders for people who are generally over 6 feet tall. And we actually have a shorter spring for people who are under 5'2" and for kids, because kids really love CoreSpring. We also have a custom sleeve because I worked with it for about 1.5 years. And when I watched the videos, I realized 75% of the cues were to keep the spring from getting in people's hair. Now, Joel doesn't have any hair, so he didn't understand why we needed the sleeve. Trust me, we need the sleeve. But I also knew that I wanted to put that spring directly on me and start to move. And the first thing I did was something called neck release, which is a signature CoreSpring move where you take the spring over the tops of your traps and you load the spring by pressing into the loops. And the spring resistance is very interesting because it creates incremental, very uniform resistance, right? So it's a spring. So it has this incredible energy stored in it. And all of those coils separate at a very, very uniform rate. So as you're working with it, you stay curious. I mean, people actually, they start to feel movements in a different way. It adds a substantial amount of resistance. And for elderly people, like my mother is 87, she uses the same spring that I do. Now she interacts with it a little bit differently, and I've created exercises for her that I now do with everyone, including an exercise called posture reset. She has adult onset scoliosis, like a lot of people, a lot of seniors that I've worked with, or I've worked with people who've had scoliosis their whole life, and now they're in that sort of decline that's making the scoliosis worse. It creates this incremental, interesting kind of resistance. And that's why it is a method unto itself, even though I use Pilates concepts and principles because that's my training. And I think it really helped that I was a Pilates teacher. So anyway, that's why it became a method, because what I realized, and it's called direct spring resistance, because you're not indirectly working with spring resistance. You're not pulling and pushing, and it's not a compression spring. It is an expansion spring. There are a lot of compression springs in fitness. They've been used for 100 years. These kind of dumbbells with springs, so they press in, and then springs are fascinating. I know way too much about it, but I have to say, before CoreSpring, and why CoreSpring I think was interesting to me immediately, was I was obsessed with why Joe Pilates chose springs and not weights and pulleys. And he did explore this because he discovered the spring resistance in a hospital setting during World War I, where he was using whatever was available for these people who couldn't get on the mat. They couldn't move around. So he used spring resistance that he hooked up to the bed. And when he went back to Germany after the war, he was in an English prison camp. When he did go back to Germany, he did play with kinds of apparatus that had weights and pulleys. One of them looked like a bunk bed kind of thing, but then who's going to climb up there if you're rheumatic, if you have bad back, or people who help. So he eventually went back to the spring, and then he just went for it. And everything he created involved spring resistance. And it's intrigued me a lot, having tried weights, got bored to death with personal training. I just couldn't do it. If somebody said I needed to do a third set of anything, I was just going to run screaming from the gym. So Pilates was a lot of variety, a lot of get in, get out. It's very anaerobic. It's a lot of interval training just built into the repertoire. Challenge yourself, get it, and then move on. I've worked with Pilates teachers who make their clients do 3 sets of 100.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, why? They make them do it on the mat, then they make them do it on the reformer, then they make them do it. And I'm like watching this going, there are 500 exercises in the repertoire. I really felt for these people, but the clients didn't seem to mind, and everybody to each his own. But the variety, that's a little bit of the personal training sneaking into Pilates, this 3 sets of something.
You have a CoreSpring membership. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm actually creating the membership right now.
Oh, okay. And it helps with breath work and posture-based movement. Is that so? This is where we would learn how to use CoreSpring.
There are 4 conceptual guiding lights in CoreSpring: alignment for tone, breath for posture, core connection, and balance in motion. So alignment for tone is something that I've been teaching as a Pilates teacher for many years. As I said, my business is alignment. And if I could teach someone and instruct them through a workout that would add muscle in alignment, then their posture would improve outside of the room. The work really happens in gravity. This is why I get back to when we're walking in an optimal alignment with gravity. Gravity is what's shaping the muscle. The workout is not shaping your muscles. The workout is intensifying and thickening the muscle. That's why if you're working out and you're out of alignment, you run into some problems. I've seen people come in and they've been doing personal training, and their posture is very hunched. They have all these things in their pelvis. They're out of whack, and then they're adding a bunch of muscle, and that's just locking that in. So the very first thing I do as a Pilates teacher is help that person find optimal alignment. That is what's going to create the tone. The other 23 hours of the day, or at least 12 hours a day, that when we're up and moving, if we're moving in alignment, the pull of gravity is shaping that muscle. That is what does it. If you look at the Maasai tribe in Africa, you don't maybe know my name, but they're the people have baskets on their heads.
Yeah.
And they wear a lot of tartans, right? They have perfect posture. Among all African tribes, the ones who balance things on their heads have perfect posture, and they consequently have perfect musculature. They've never seen the inside of a gym. They don't work out. Their life is their conditioning, right?
Right.
Wear special shoes, round bottom shoes, when they leave their village and they're not walking in the sand anymore. They're made out of motorcycle tires. I actually had a client come back from Africa and bring me a pair of these shoes. Because I taught something called Maasai barefoot technology, which are these specially designed shoes. Physiological footwear was a big phenomenon 20 years ago. They created the genre based on the Maasai tribe. So it resonated with me because I knew if I can teach someone optimal posture and walking, my job is in their life. It's not just in my studio. So CoreSpring is an extension of that. CoreSpring, it's just an expression of my life's work, really. And this man I created it with, because we both have been trying to heal ourselves daily to try to make sure that we were not in pain.
Charlyn, there's a signature W exercise, I understand, with CoreSpring. How does that support back strength and posture in ways that the traditional resistance bands can't?
First of all, the W is you take this spring, it has a sleeve on it. And by the way, you can get any color that we offer. It's a style choice. It doesn't.
Okay.
So that doesn't represent how tight the spring is or anything. Okay, got it.
I mean, it's an accessory. Let's face it, girls. So you take it in your hands in the long setting. So you have your hands in the long loops and you have the CoreSpring behind you and slack. So that makes you have to pull your shoulders back in order to get the CoreSpring to go slack. Again, as optimally slack as possible. Then you press your arms. So that's the narrow W. And then you go wide and squeeze your shoulders. Now you can feel it even without the CoreSpring, right? Do you feel those muscles? But you're not locking your elbows. And this is the difference between push and press. I really try never to say push, because push happens from the hands. Press happens from the arms. And it's just a linguistic cue. Believe me, I've experimented with it for 25 years. I have a background in psycholinguistics, and I became very interested in how trying to teach someone with language, something that's movement, you're in two different parts of the brain, because right brain is movement, left brain is language, and the two are very difficult to connect. You press your arms out to the broader W, and the CoreSpring is now touching across the back and the arms, and you isometrically contract all the muscles that are connected to the CoreSpring, and that's your chest.
Interesting.
And this is why CoreSpring essentially named itself.
Right.
Like when I was showing it to my friends in New York last week, and they were really understanding for the first time that when they started working, she goes, "Oh my God, I'm just doing my bicep curl and I can feel my core." I'm like, bingo, it named itself. It saved me 2/3 of the cueing that I would have to do in Pilates to get someone to that point. CoreSpring does it for me. So once the people feel it, then I'm directing how to improve that experience, as opposed to trying to get them to that experience. And that's what I love about it. I created a 90-day challenge in my Pilates studio, Playhouse Pilates. And for about 12 years, 13 years, I supervised this transformation, 90-day challenge. 60% of my Pilates clients were coming in 3 times a week or more for Pilates. I mean, no studio does that. People come in once or twice a week, right? These people were renewing it every quarter. And I never made it a membership. It was still a challenge. You had to check in with me, get before and after pictures. We had a 3-step process and a lot of different things where I had my touch on each person who was doing the challenge, but they were working with different teachers. With CoreSpring, I'm creating challenges that I can do with people online that take 30 days to get them to what took 90 days.
So it fast tracks it.
It fast tracks it because it gets them there faster, and my work is reduced and their lifestyle changes. Because you do the Da Vinci or you do the W when you've been sitting at your computer for a while, get up and move around with that, you've just exponentialized that habit a lot of people do to set their clock and get up every 45 minutes or whatever. Now it gives you something that actually really wakes up. It really works with the fascia of your body in a very unique way.
I'm just wondering about combining some other parts of your body. You know, when we introduced you, we talked about gut health and how that is such a hot topic right now. How do you incorporate digestive health into the programs?
It's a really long journey, but I have to say I've been a gut health specialist since I want to say 2012. I didn't really graduate from the program until 2016. But I always was interested in nutrition. My mother is hypoglycemic. There's a lot of diabetes in my family. My brother's passed away from a diabetic stroke. So I've always been, and I have blood sugar, that I manage. I'm not on any medication for it, because I saw very clearly the relationship between mood and food. Like I could see my mother just transform if she ate a piece of protein. Now, I wasn't consciously saying, oh, it's that, but those images and those experiences. When I went to get a degree in psychology, I was always asking, so when do you ask people what they're eating? And they're like, oh, that's a registered dietitian thing. And I'm like, there's more to it. And there was this whole thing that went on in San Francisco, the Twinkie guy, the guy who said he ate too many Twinkies and shot the mayor.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I remember
Right, right.
that.
And that stuck with me. That was like, oh, what is
The
that?
Twinkie defense.
Right. So I always knew there was a relationship between food and our personalities, our experiences. And then I went through multiple fertility treatments. So I really got into what we call preconceptive care, where you start to go and you check every single thing that's going on. But here's the thing that really shifted me. In 2003, I had a panic attack. Now, I've never had a panic attack in my life. I couldn't drive my car. I felt like my body weighed 10,000 pounds. I had to pull over. And I was under pretty much a lot of stress at the time. But I was like, what was that? So I had to pull over, calmed myself down, called as I couldn't make it to teach. I remember I was on my way to Nickelodeon to teach Nickelodeon. And I stayed there until I could drive. And then I went to my chiropractor and I said, I don't know what to do. And I was referred to a naturopathic doctor down the line. And he asked me a series of questions. And what happened was he asked me, because I didn't connect this. I wasn't going to the naturopathic doctor because of the panic attack. I want to emphasize this. I was going to him because I had bloating. I had this bloating thing, and I'm a Pilates teacher. And what is this bloating and why I'm eating clean and I'm eating the kale and I'm doing all that stuff. But then he asked me a question in this nutrition consultation. He said, is there anything else that's happened that's, out of the norm? And I said, well, yeah, I had this panic attack a few months ago. And he said, okay, I want you to take this test. And he sent me to a lab and I did a test of something I could get from home. That's all I'm going to say. It turned out I had a bacterial infection called H. pylori, which is so common that he said, when you get the results, take them to your doctor will have 2 antibiotics prepackaged, ready to give to you for this problem. And I was like, how come I've never heard of it? It is the most common cause of heart attack and stomach ulcers and even stomach cancer in our country. And nobody knows what it is. Once I took care of that, I was like, well, this is really interesting. A lot of other things improved for me. And that's when I started studying gut health. Like, what is this? And right at that time, there was a re-emerging discovery about the enteric brain. Now, keep in mind, this was 2003. The enteric brain postulated that there are more neurotransmitters in our gut than we have in our skull. And every human culture has a phrase for gut feeling. I don't know, it's just a gut feeling. I just didn't go over there. So I started to study this very clearly. And I thought, if our gut health is balanced, that means our gut brain is balanced, right? That is something people are talking about now. I was talking about 20 years ago, people were like, what are you talking about? But then when I started to really study gut health with some people who really know what they're doing, what I was seeing in my practice. So these 2 gut health things were happening simultaneously. One was the gut brain. And I spend all day as a Pilates teacher cueing people to activate a part of their body they're generally numb to. They can't feel it. I poke it with my fingers. I give them coughing. I give them all kinds of ways. Lie over a ball so they can feel their core, put them in these like Pilates positions till they feel their core. So I am working with their core all the time. And I'm starting to think I'm working with their enteric brain too. I am activating a part of their brain. I am improving the communication with this enteric brain through what I'm doing with Pilates, because we're not doing ab work. We're doing core activation, something you feel outside when you're moving around. There was that. Then I decided to not do nutrition, but do certified natural health. And within that program, there was a nutrition program. And one of the people there was a Loomis trained nutritionist, which is enzymes and herbs out of the Enzyme Institute, the Food Enzyme Institute. And I was like, I had people coming to me, including myself. I had mechanical things that were there every year. And I've had clients for 20 years. And I was like, I can't believe you still have a shoulder issue or you still have something going on with your neck. You're eating the kale. You're taking your vitamins. You've stayed thin. You're doing all the magazine article checklists. Like, what is going on? Why do you still have this problem? We should be pain free. Where is the promise of fitness? Where is the promise of Pilates? Like, when are we supposed to be optimal? And this program, this enzyme program, enzymes and herbs, I started introducing it to my 90-day challenge clients as a bonus. And I did it for free for about a year to just see what happened. And remarkable things happen. I have a neuropathy thing that was going on with my arms and shoulders, despite all of everything I told you, the checklist gone. I had a client shoulder issue, totally gone. Really interesting things, like a client who had Sjogren's syndrome and was on medication. And when she did my program, I said, well, this is what's going on with your body, because my gut health program is customized. It actually tells me what your body's doing. People are like, oh, bone broth is good for you. Well, maybe it's not. If you can't absorb it, your body is not going to receive the nutrition that's in the food. You could be eating the most perfect, organic, wonderful food, but if there's something that's not allowing it to break down into digestible, microscopic parts, it's not going to nourish you. So what was happening with this particular woman is that she was so high in sodium that her cells were breaking open to release hydration.
That doesn't sound good.
Her vitamin C was so low that, when you have very low vitamin C, you have very low antioxidants. So you are subject to free radical damage. Needless to say, within a month, she was off of medication for Sjogren's syndrome. She didn't have dark circles under her eyes anymore. She lost the weight.
So this was through your enzymes and herbs class?
An enzyme, it's using enzymes. Now, this is why when I say gut health, people think you're talking about burps, right? They think you're talking about, oh, I take Beano, so I don't, let everybody know I just had Beano. And I've always been obsessed with that kind of stuff. Trust me. This is different. There are enzymes that we need to digest our food. Those same enzymes are never wasted. Those same enzymes are active in the body. The enzymes are what make what we consume available at a cellular level. So the program involves taking enzymes with food, like before food, with food, on an empty stomach, or before you go to bed, obviously on an empty stomach before you go to bed. There are different protocols. It's customized to each person who does it. I've done it different times for myself, specifically for the neuropathy thing. And I never did the same protocol twice, because my body had different needs. But the weaknesses in my spine and in my neck, where I have things that are vulnerable, they suffered just the same, even though it wasn't exactly the same thing. So people who do my program are obsessed with getting their orders. They're like, so I'm actually going to have an apothecary on my website so that my clients can order their own. Because if they get to me and they're like, where is this? Arthritis in the hands reducing, neck and shoulder problems reducing.
Wow.
I'm sitting here talking to you and I don't have aches and pains. I don't have neuropathy. I don't have these things that I thought were just part of getting older. And I'm talking when I was in my 30s. I thought, well, it's just the way it's going to be. I'm just going to be like this. And I had things around my wrists and I had all kinds of stuff. It's really not about that's why the name of my program is Beyond Kale and Calories, which you may or may not have noticed. It's because I got so sick of hearing about calories and kale. The woman I was talking about, this woman, I said, okay, you're eating all this kale. Where is this food coming from? She had a food service delivering it to her. And she said, that's funny because my friends told me, oh, that food service you order your food from, they were just kind of busted for having a lot of salt. I said, so this is about customization. Our life we are unique. We are a thumbprint in this world. So you can read every magazine article you want about how to strengthen your triceps. But if you can't move your arm without pain, you're never going to be able to do that. So my whole purpose in life is to shout from the mountaintops, obviously about Pilates, but really about health from a cellular level. And that includes breathing. Obviously, it's going to impact your cells. So those are the two parallel tracks with my gut health. And I think it's the first time I've ever really spoken about it in a setting. So thank you for being curious about it, because I didn't really articulate these two parallel journeys that took me to this idea, the idea of mechanically stimulating the core. And I would say to people, because I developed a way of teaching Pilates that bypassed people's personalities. That is my method. And I thought, I wonder if I can teach this to people. So that's why I created the mastery program. And now with CoreSpring, I'm teaching that method, that way of teaching. Because basically, I could get someone back to the 100, for example, and they'd be going along, and I've got them to this great place, and they're just like moving along, and then they'll stop, collapse, and go, I don't get this exercise. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, I'm the expert in the room. I wasn't saying anything. You know what? I'm not even talking to you. I'm talking to your body. Now we're going to start over, and you're going to finish the exercise and just follow. Just learn something, because your body gets this. And it's actually having some fun with it. It's your opportunity to learn. You don't have to beat this body into submission. You don't have to keep telling this body what to do. This body actually has some wisdom and some playfulness in it. And it's enjoying this oxygenation and this challenging movement. It's enjoying this challenge. So just go with it. Trust me. And it works, and it helps people, because we talk a lot about play, but people associate play with being silly maybe. And play is certainly taking risks. right? And pushing yourself. And I love that about play, but play is also learning something.
Okay. I thought you were going to say joyful because that's where
It is
my head was
joyful,
going.
but I don't want to overuse the word. What is joy? What is play? I just wrote an article. I don't know if they'll pick it up for a magazine, an online magazine. They were like talking about play. And I said, well, what is play when we become adults? Is it going back to something that we did as a child? Is it challenging ourselves to do something new? It is all those things. It can be all those things. But when I think of play, I think of specifically, I could not play as a child. I just wanted to be normal. Right. I saw other kids running around and playing sports, and I couldn't do those things without feeling like really uncomfortable. So I can't really go back to stuff I did. I could play tetherball and I could play volleyball. Okay. Because I could just stand still and hit that ball, and I got really good at it. But play as an adult, and I think as a child too, because we play sports, we play, what is a play? Right. When we're acting, we're performing. It's a play. So play is something. Playing sports is very interesting to me, and it's relevant to Pilates and gymnastics because when you play a sport, you repeat something until you become really good at it. That is a form of play. That is what I'm talking about. And when I'm talking about CoreSpring, because you can master certain things very quickly that would take you years, months for me to get you there as a Pilates teacher, you can start to play with, oh, I think I can take my shoulder here, and I think I can do this. And you're doing it in a pain-free range. You are playing with, and the playful instruction that happens that we lose. We become habitual movers. I used to say this, and I still say it to my clients. I said, if your husband walks into a room, there are 200 people in the room, and you have a profile view of the door, you know when your husband comes in the door, don't you? You can see him in the corner of your eye, just the way he runs his hand through his hair. She's like, you're right. I can. Our movements are such an expression of us that we become our own feedback mechanism. So creating some variety in our movement, a movement vocabulary, a way of moving that's foreign, but interesting and new. That's what I'm talking about when you're talking about the playfulness. And that's why play had to be in my business model and my business name with Playhouse Pilates.
So your programs also include nutrition. Is that correct?
It does, but
What kind of advice do you have about food? Do you have any specific approach you recommend?
I think people have to get very clear about allergies. I think getting food allergy tests is important. But I have a case study, someone who is actually still in my program, who had what's called a non-productive coughing, just coughing all the time. And then she would say, oh, it's allergies. I'm like, you know what? I'm with you like every day, every week. It's consistently the same, whether there's dust or pollen or is it the studio? Is it happening to the studio? So we go out walk? No, it turns out that because our lungs is one of our elimination organ. It turns out that she had a hard time digesting certain foods. So she went on a digestive health program to stop that. So yes, you can test your food allergies so that you know things that we just take for granted. I have allergies or I have this or that. Maybe it's what you're eating. When I talk to people about their food, a food journal, at least 3 days. So I kind of understand how they eat. I prefer 5 days, and the Monday through Friday is the best because that is where the most routine food habits happen. Then we go through a series of symptoms, things they take for granted. Obviously, blood sugar is going to show up if they're eating stuff like that. But blood sugar is interesting because I had a woman who had high blood sugar, but she didn't eat sugar, but she was gluten-free. And all of her gluten-free food was made with rice flour. And guess what? Blood sugar. That's why how we subjectively feel is kind of our first barometer of what's happening with our food. We know if we're bloated, we know the foods that a reaction to. So I think figuring those things out through food allergy tests, through journaling your food, starting to put patterns together and track emotions, just like I was saying about learning from my mom. If you feel like depressed or sad after lunch, then you probably have a blood sugar drop and you need to figure out how to balance your food. So I don't look at nutrition. Again, no calories. And I don't require you to eat kale, as wonderful as it is, just because we think it's healthy.
So we've talked about your website, but where can people learn more about you, CoreSpring, Playhouse Pilates?
I didn't close Playhouse Pilates.
Okay.
I shuttered it in after 13 years during COVID, as I couldn't run a business that wasn't running. But I never stopped teaching Pilates.
So you do that online now often?
Yeah, I'm just online, and I've had a home studio the whole time. So you can find me on Playhouse Pilates. I'm actually creating the CoreSpring website. It's going to be a little more fleshed out. I will have a YouTube page live probably the first week of July. that will have at least 23 CoreSpring exercises on it that you can just patch in and follow along. They won't class format. And it is phenomenal to do CoreSpring in combination with Pilates. People who do CoreSpring understand the springs of Pilates way more better.
So should they go to your website or Instagram? Where can they find you the best?
You can find me through Instagram. You can find me through Playhouse Pilates.
What's the address?
PlayhousePilates.com.
Okay.
And then CoreSpring.com is the CoreSpring website. And you can also find me at CharlynHuss.com, which is a pending website where you're going to be able to find all these different things.
Well, we'll be sure to link those in our show notes. So if someone wants to learn more about you, our listeners want to find out more, they can click through.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for talking with us today. This has been very educational. It's fascinating.
Yes. I really learned a lot. Thank you so
I really
much.
appreciate you, Jill and Chris. I think I really like what you're creating. And thank you for letting me do a little bit of a deep dive.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's great. See you next time.
See you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. I've been trying to do a bit more Pilates over the past few months, so I found this conversation to be interesting. We talked with somebody else who said they love to do Pilates, and that was when I decided to start trying it again. I didn't know that the purpose of the 100 was to work on breath. I just always wondered why we were doing it all the time.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's more about abs than breath, but, it's all connected.
Yep.
I don't know. I think you breathe out for 5 beats and you move your arms up and down with your feet raised in the air.
Right. And you flutter your hands and then you breathe in for a count of 5 and out for a count of 5.
Yeah. And you do that routine for 10, right? I first learned about the 100. I took a class at my gym and it was called Pilates Yoga Fusion. I'm sure it wasn't, the nationally certified up this, because I know they don't like to merge things. But for me, it was perfect because it allowed me to not feel intimidated by the idea of Pilates, because I've seen those reformers and I've tried reformer before and it's challenging. Woo-hoo. But the fusion I could deal with because I can do yoga,
The first time I did something, it was a class. Talk about fusion. It was a class that was sort of, I think they called it yoga lattes, which is a combination of yoga and Pilates. And then they threw some strength training in there, like little hand weights and dumbbells in it. I loved that class. I did that years ago. It was a great class.
Yeah, sometimes the overlight classes get you into something that you find out you really love and you maybe felt intimidated to start with.
Right.
That's a cool thing. Of course, Charlyn is very focused on Pilates. She really knows her stuff.
The CoreSpring, that is interesting. I think what's kind of nice about it is it almost makes a Pilates workout be a bit more mobile.
Yeah, it's accessible. Where a lot of the Pilates equipment is, it's challenging. It's tough, but you don't carry it around like a floor mat that you would take, like let's do yoga in the park. You don't do something like that.
Yeah. No one ever says, let's do Pilates in the park.
Well, I know, we've recorded this here in June, and she's going to have that website up in August when this podcast actually releases this episode. So I'm eager to see what kind of videos she has up there and different training sessions and things. So that's going to be cool. And just like all exercises, having the correct form makes all the difference. And doing the wrong form, you can kind of get hurt.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like the last time our last episode, we were talking about the TRX. It's the same thing. There's things that are really helpful to you, but you do have to learn how to use them.
I also thought it was quite interesting how she tied in gut health with the Pilates movements and things, and talking about the gut brain kind of things. There's so much to that feeling that you have in your gut.
Yeah, they always say, trust your gut.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the gut instinct and all of that. And there's a reason for that.
So if you're listening, let Chris and me know if you have any thoughts that you want to share about our talk with Charlyn. Do you do Pilates? Do you care about gut health? Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. We love to hear from you. You can leave us a message at becomingellie.com, and you can also find us on our social media, Becoming Ellie, on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn.
Please consider joining our private Becoming Ellie Facebook group.
And if you like listening to our podcast, check out the Ageless Traveler podcast hosted by Adrian Berg. It's the best resource for the 60-plus active traveler who wants to never stop traveling. Adrian talks about various destinations, health and wellness travel, luxury travel for less, solo, grandparent, and volunteer tours.
Adrian helps you lead a very good life, that's for sure. To listen to her podcast, visit the website agelesstraveler.com.
It was great talking with you today, Jill. I'm looking forward to our next episode of the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast.
I am too. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.